Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today we're talking about the spirituality of money. You know, I hate to play into stereotypes, but what is it about Jews and their possessions? You know, there's this personality. I don't know enough about him. Maybe you could help me. Thomas Sowell?
Thomas Sowell.
Yeah. Who is he? What is he?
He's a black.
Is he a friend or a foe?
Friend. Oh,
Friend.
He's a right-wing.
He's a right-wing friend of the Jews. Okay. So he has there's a video clip. He's a professor, a black professor, brilliant. He was asked a question. What is it that Jews need to do in order to end anti-Semitism? And I couldn't tell if his answer was sarcastic or serious. He said one word the Jews need to do in order to end anti-Semitism. You ready? Fail.
That's interesting.
Ain't that interesting? Now, I wasn't sure if that was some deeply anti-Semitic trope.
Yeah, it could.
Or if he was saying, everyone's just jealous of you guys.
It is sarcastic, talking about how the Jews are so successful.
Well, that's why I'm not sure. I don't know enough about him. But my point is, what? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think what he's effectively saying is that, look, you know, you're 0.0025 of the world population, and you're getting 22% of the Nobel Prizes, right? You're more than half of America's billionaires, right? You're of the most successful people in the whole world. So that's why people hate you. Now, the question is, what is it about Jews and money? What is it about Jews and possessions? Jews and stuff? Isn't it non-spiritual to be wealthy?
No,
No?
not at all.
Oh, okay. I like this. Okay. Now, by the way, my Christian friends will disagree with you. My Christian friends will disagree with you, and they tell me I have a Unitarian friend. He tells me it says in the Bible that the rich man is a sinner. Now, I don't know anything about the New Testament. I admit, I plead ignorance. I know nothing about it. But this is a quote that he tells me. He says it says somewhere in the Christian Bible that the rich man is a sinner. I said, well, the Torah is diametrically opposed.
The Torah is a Bible.
And I'm going to prove that to you right now. I'm going to show you where in the Torah we learn, and I appreciate your being ahead of the game here, Chuck, that you're comfortable enough to say, you know what? Rich is spiritual. There's no conflict. Right, so we're going to try to analyze this Thomas Sowell situation. Sowell or Sowell? Soul, like S-O-U-L almost, right? But he's got a W. He's got two U's. S-O-U. He's got three U's. O-U-W. Okay, fine. So it's all about you, right? So keep it focused. Let's go. So let's try to understand what is it about the Jewish people and this knack of preserving assets. I mean, Jews and economists are like a hand and a glove, right? A house, they get along like a house on fire, right? So what is it about the relationship between Jews and possessions? It all starts in this week's Torah portion. Actually, I mean, look, remember, Torah is not just a set of stories. It's not just a history book. The Torah's stories, you know how many stories happened in the past? You know, let's think about it this way. From Adam and Eve, which is the first portion of the Torah, until Moses passes away, which is the last portion in the 5 books of Moses. How many years transpired? Think about this. How many years transpired between year 1, Adam and Eve, until Moses passed away? It was 2,488. 2,488 years span. That's the entire 5 books of Moses. You know how many stories happened in 2,488 years? Yet we're only capturing, 54 portions, 5 books, half of which are actually laws, and the other, maybe a third of the Torah is stories. So why is it that some stories are incorporated and some aren't? The reason is because only those stories that are timeless and relevant for all time are recorded in the Torah. Those stories that are not relevant for all time are not. So what's the story in this week's Torah portion? It's fascinating. The Jewish people. Take a look on page 413 in the blue Chumash. So the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea this week's Torah portion. It's pretty awesome. By the way, only 20% of the Jewish people made it out of Egypt, as we read in today's Torah reading. We read that in today's Torah reading, by the way. You saw that?
So Moses didn't do a very good job.
That's right. I guess so. I guess you could say that. Moses' job is the rabbi. His job is to inspire the people. He only got 1 out of 5. Look, I guess it could have been worse, you know.
Can you imagine if all the people here, you only got 20% of them?
If I got 20% of the Jewish population of Palm Beach Gardens in Minyan every day, let me tell you, this would be standing room only. I think the guy's doing amazingly well. So Moses was only able to inspire 20% of the Jewish people in Egypt. Look at this. Beautiful. They were slaves. They were entrenched in slavery for 210 years. For 86 years of back-breaking labor.
Multiple generations.
This is generational trauma. And comes some dude and he's like, this is not okay. And they're like, what are you smoking? This is real, right? It's just like today when a rabbi gets up and he says, by the way, guys, golf courses, golf club memberships, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, United Nations, ICC, all this is nonsense. Real life is Mashiach. And they're like, I don't know what that guy's smoking, man, but just keep on moving. Don't pay him any attention, kids. Just keep on going. That's exactly the same thing. I mean, we've been in this exile for almost 2,000 years. I mean, we kind of got used to it. You know, you get used to your eyes get used to focusing in the dark, right? And somebody comes and opens the door. You're like, can you shut that door, please? It's giving me a headache. Right? It's too bright, right? That's what's happening. So it's just a quick look at that, right? Because it says in today's Torah portion, page 398, 399 in English. Yeah, just a quick, there's a side note over here. Oh, so fine. So chamushi means armed, but Rashi, it's Rashi who brings it in. I can only show you this in the Hebrew on page 398. It's 3 lines from the bottom of the Rashi letters. You see the Rashi letters in 398? Yeah. The hard to read letters in the middle of the page? These ones? Yeah. There's 2 columns of hard to read letters, of Rashi letters. 3 lines from the bottom. It says right in the middle, chamushim. Chamushim, another interpretation of chamushim, instead of armed, it's echad michamisha yatsu. Chamushim means 1/5. That instead of reading it as armed, the Jewish people left Egypt, you can read it as 1/5 left Egypt. That 4 out of 5 Jews died in the 3 days of darkness. Right? So that's what it means. What? That's a lot of people, because if you think that 2 million Jews, no, how many are, 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, count the elderly, the kids, and the women, you're like at least 3 million, right? So if 3 million is 20%, you're talking about 15 million total, right? So it's like 12 million approx that died. 12 million, which basically tells you, Toby, that if you're living today in a world where 4 out of 5 of your friends think that you're absolutely out of your mind for coming to shul, if you're living in a world where 4 out of 5 of your friends think that you're nuts for having any spirituality and religion in your life, then you're good. You're doing well. You know, you kind of like. But the problem is that when it comes to breaking free out of this exile, the problem is that to break free out of this exile, all the Jews have to go. And by the way, something else we read just yesterday, Rob. Yesterday it says, when we're speaking to the wicked son, when it says when you speak to the wicked son, it's at the end of Shabbos's Torah portion. It says that the way you speak to the wicked son, which is quoted here on page here. I'm trying to find the exact quote here. Page 394, I think it is. Yeah, I'm going back. I can't find the exact line, but it says here with the way you speak to the wicked son.
393, verse 8, like in the middle, I think.
Yeah. Right, fine. So 393 verse 8. Actually, let me just check that a second in the Hebrew here.
No, that's the one who doesn't know, and it's after that.
Right, it's right after.
It's when you say to the wicked son, you say to him, God redeemed me from Egypt. You're basically saying to him, he redeemed me, but not you, because if you were there, you would not have been redeemed. That's what we say to the wicked son. We actually say that to him. We say to him, if you were there, you would not have been redeemed. Why? Because we're trying to give him, we're trying to motivate him to do teshuvah, to repent. But the idea here is that the wicked Jews did not come out of Egypt. That's what it means. It means that the wicked ones didn't come out because 4 out of 5 didn't come out. Anyways, back to our story. We're talking about money, guys. Let's go back to money.
And that was the darkness during which they died.
They died during the plague of darkness. Says not to.
Died. They just didn't stay behind.
They died. Yeah, they didn't stick around. In fact, there were some Egyptians that jumped over the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. The guys that joined the winning team. Right. They joined the Jewish people, and they were the ones that were responsible. They were the insincere converts who were the ones responsible for the golden calf. We have Erev Rav today as well. Erev Rav is the people amongst our brethren that are just, they mess everything up.
And this is the
They're
argument
insincere.
I had last week with my friend Sean Rubin.
Yeah, a
He
debate.
disagreed.
I know he disagrees with my position
Totally.
about the 20%.
Yeah.
He doesn't agree with it. You got to show him this Rashi, by the way. You got to show. That's why I showed it to you black and white, because you got to show it to him where it says it right here in Rashi, and let me know what he says. Because if this rabbi from New Jersey disagrees with me, it's not with me. He's disagreeing with Rashi. You know, Rashi is the ultimate super commentary on Torah. And I remember he was here like 2 years ago, Marty. Remember that guy Rabbi was here 2 years ago, and he publicly, debated with me, disagreed with me on this.
Where did Rashi get it from?
Rashi gets it from the Talmud, of course. Rashi doesn't make anything up.
It's Torah Shabbat Peh,
Torah Shabbat Peh, that's right. It's the
oral Torah.
it's the oral Torah, exactly right. Okay. Anyways, let's keep on going here, guys. So, by the way, but one thing which is relevant to us is that we are the reincarnation of the generation that came out of Egypt. That's what the Arizal says. The generation that will welcome the Mashiach is the generation that did not make it into the promised land. Right? So these are the 20% that made it out of Egypt, but didn't have the courage to go into Israel. We are the reincarnation of that generation, and now we have to make sure that they failed to have the faith to enter the promised land. So we need to make sure that we do. Okay, so that's why we're having this conversation, because we're here before. This is not our first rodeo. We've been in this world before, and we're here to fix, to do the tikkun to our mistake in a previous lifetime. Anyways, what I want to show you here is after the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, and they sang that beautiful song on page 413. Look what it says. Look what it says, page 413, verse number 22 in the middle of the page. 413, verse 22, middle of the page. It's right after the Song of the Sea. The first thing the Torah tells us, after the Song of the Sea, the Israelites then collected the gold and silver ornaments and precious jewels with which the Egyptians had adorned their horses. There was so much that the wealth that they acquired there exceeded that which they took with them from Egypt. On the following day, the 22nd of Nisan, which is the day after they crossed the Red Sea, they were still busy collecting this wealth. So Moses had to forcibly make the Jews set out from the Sea of Reeds. Moses has to force the Jews away from the Sea of Reeds. They returned to Etam and went into the Shur desert. They walked for 3 days in the desert without finding any water. Now, if you go to the Hebrew, on page 412, it's the fifth line in the Hebrew, page 412, fifth line, second last word, right? This is why it's very important to know how to read Torah, because when you read this, remember, there's no vowels in the Torah. So it says, Vayisa Moshe, and Moshe traveled the Jews. Vayisa Moshe et Yisrael miyam suf. You could read this, and Moshe traveled with the Jews from the Red Sea, but the vowels, which are invisible in the Torah, the vowels are actually not Vayisa, but Vayasa. Not and Moses traveled with the Jews, but that Moses forced the Jews to travel away from the Red Sea. So it's just one patach, one line, as opposed to a chirik, which is a dot. It's invisible in the Torah because the Torah doesn't have vowels. But the vowels are part of the oral Torah, by the way. The pronunciation of the words is part of the oral Torah, which is, by the way, one of the biggest arguments for the authenticity of the oral Torah. God gives us a Torah, right, a written Torah without vowels. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you have a word like BD? Imagine you had English without vowels. English, they're A-E-I-O-U. You have letters that are vowels, but in Hebrew, the vowels are dots and lines, right? So imagine you have like BD. You get a message from God, BD. What is that? What does that mean? It could be bad. It could be bad. It could be bad. It could be bod. It could be bid. I mean, there's so many. What are we supposed to do? Bid on an auction? Go to bed? Are we bad? Like, what does this mean? The vowel makes all the difference, right? Exactly. It says you shouldn't eat meat and milk together. But the word milk, chalav, can also be read as chalev, which is fats. So do you read it as milk and meat is prohibited, or do you read it as meat and fats? Maybe it's meat and fats. Maybe we've been doing it wrong for 3,000 years, right? So that's why you need the vowels. The vowels tell you how to read the word. And they tell you how to read the word. Otherwise, you're not getting it wrong. So
when you're reading Torah, because I'm not proficient at that, how do you know?
You have to study and prepare. I studied this when I was 13 years old. I read Torah 13 every Shabbos, 14 every Shabbos, 15 every Shabbos. So it got engraved in my memory, which is why, for me, when I read Torah, I most of the time, I know what the words are, because I knew that for the rest of my life, I want to know how to read Torah. So in those very impressionable years, I made sure to study it. But the way you do it is you take a Torah, and it's got like it's called a tikkun, where you have the two columns. One is a column exactly like it looks in Torah. Another one is an identical column with the vowels and the trope, the musical trope. And you read one line with the vowels and trope, and one line without the vowels and trope. And you read over and over and over and over. Then the second line, over and over. Then you go back again, 1, 2. Then you do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you keep on doing it. It takes a lot of time, but if you get it right,
And you play in the background the Chabad.
yeah, it's great. It's awesome. It's awesome. Okay, so let's keep on going because I'm totally not getting to my point yet here, guys, about the Jews and the money. So let me try to hit the jackpot. Let's get to the money, right?
Bottom line.
So why is it that Moses is at the Red Sea now with the Jewish people? What are they doing? Seriously, what are the Jewish people doing? They're running away from slavery. Okay, let's just put things into the right context. You're running away from slavery, and where are you going? You're running to Mount Sinai. I mean, it's eyebrow raising to see that Moses has to force the Jews away from the Red Sea. Don't you want to escape the Egyptians? Don't you want to run away from them and never ever see them ever again? Besides, you're on the way to Mount Sinai. God just gave you these 10 crushing plagues that ripped apart the Egyptians, the Egyptian empire. And now, don't you want to go and say hi to God at Mount Sinai, receive the Torah, become the chosen people? Yeah, weren't you worried about the water? I mean, this is going to be messy. What are you doing? Why were the Jewish people stuck at the Red Sea? After, just picture the scene. All night long, they crossed the Red Sea. The Egyptians were drowning. And now in the morning, they wake up and they see the Egyptians are strewn across the shore, dead. Right? They're dead Egyptians, dead horses. And what are they doing? They're collecting money. Money! What? What are they doing? I mean, this is crazy, right? So it seems like the Jews have some sort of a unhealthy obsession with money. That's what it looks like. But let's dig a little bit deeper into the spirituality of money. Remember, the Jewish people came out of Egypt. They were asked by they asked the Egyptians to pay them. They asked them to pay them for right. They already got paid,
And now they want another.
and now they want more. And it said here in the translation, it says the Israelites collected more gold and silver than they took with them out of Egypt. So, it's like, what's up? Why do they need all this gold and silver? Besides, if they just experienced this great miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea, it says about the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea that God himself did that miracle. And it says that a mere maidservant on the Red Sea shore saw more divine revelation than even the prophet Ezekiel, the Babylonian prophet, was able to witness. I mean, literally, God uncovered the seabed, which is a metaphor for that which is normally concealed becoming revealed. This is the miracle, what we celebrate in the 7th day of Passover, the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea. It's the miracle of the revelation of the most deepest secrets. That's what it is. It's divine revelation of the most deepest secrets. So you just experienced like the most insane divine revelation. And what are you busy with right now? Taxes? Like you're busy with money, like what do they call them? Annuities? like that's what you're busy with right now? Seriously, that's crazy.
How did they have, it says at the end of both, they drained Egypt of its wealth in addition. So if they drained all the wealth, the king, the Pharaoh, they still had wealth.
So if on the way out of Egypt, they drained the Egypt of all its wealth, that's what it says at the end of both.
Yeah,
The end of last week's portion.
They took it from the people.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't include the army.
This is from the
The army's got their own account. It's like I just heard this morning that the Panama Canal now is going to be free for American Navy ships, right? American Navy ships is a different account from commercial ships, right? It's a different account. So my understanding, Toby, of that is that they cleared out the residential Egyptian homes, but they didn't clear out the Egyptian archives, right? Which is what they adorned their horses with, right? Remember, their horses were their tanks. These were their military gear. So besides, and one last question is, if they were heading to Mount Sinai, if you're heading to meet with God, then this is what you're stuck with. This is what you're delaying with. How is it possible that Moses needs to force the Jews away from Egypt? Here, the Rebbe gives us a paradigm shift. The Rebbe opens our eyes to understanding a beautiful, deep, beautiful understanding of the relationship between Jews and money. Because now remember this. They were after the money not because of material desire. They were after the money for spiritual desire. The spirituality of money. Remember what they were commanded to do on their way out of Egypt. What is it that Moses tells them to do? And each man should ask from his friend, from his Egyptian friend. They should ask for what? They should ask for, here it is. Go to page 387. 387, bottom of the page. Take a look. Bottom of page 387. In addition to having asked the Egyptians to borrow utensils and clothing before the plague of the firstborn, the Israelites now did again as Moses had said, and requested silver and gold utensils and clothing, which they valued the most in light of their impending journey from the Egyptians. Nonetheless, they did not carry this article themselves, but rather loaded them onto their donkeys. It says somewhere that there was not a Jew who left Egypt who didn't have at least 90 donkeys laden with goods. I mean, that sounds like quite a lot. God granted them favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, so they loaned them these items and gave them even more than they had asked for. Thus, they drained Egypt of its wealth. In addition, the women were confident that God would perform miracles for them and brought along enough timbrels for all of them to celebrate with. So you see over here that Moses had told them to request from the Egyptians gold, silver, and utensils, right? So in other words, if this was the intention, if the intention was to empty Egypt out of its possessions, to clear it out like a fishing net void of fish. How many fish are in an empty fishing net? It's very obvious that it's empty, right? It's been completely drained, right? Been completely emptied. That was the commandment of the Jewish people in Egypt. And that's why when they come out of Egypt and they're on the Red Sea and they're like, whoa, we thought we fulfilled the command of Moses to clean out Egypt of its possessions when we were on the way out of Egypt. But now we see that even more wealth than we collected on our way out, there's here on the horses. They were like, oh, our job is not done. And suddenly when they discover this, they realize that they haven't finished their job. And they were so excited about fulfilling the purpose for which the task that God gave them, which was to clean out Egypt and to take possession of all of her possessions. That's why they began to collect the gold and the silver without worrying about what was going on around them. And they collected so much. Why did they collect so much? In order to fulfill the commandment of God. The idea here is, friends, is that the purpose of a Jew amassing wealth is in order to use that wealth for a spiritual purpose.
So they can pay their pledge.
So that they can pay their pledge. Right, exactly. They can pay their pledge. Remind me of the guy if it breaks into the shul and he ran off, the thief ran off with $500,000 in pleasures. Right? Okay. So yeah, they're going to pay their pledge. You see, as Jewish people, wealth is a gift from God, which we use in order to sanctify that resource. So if you're able to own a private jet, is that a sin? No, it's not a sin at all. If you're able to use a private jet for holy purposes, you know what you're doing? You're sanctifying the private jet. Same thing with a fancy car or a golf club or a kitchen as nice as you can afford. You're supposed to not indulge. See, the key here is you're not indulging in the materialistic resource. You're engaging with it in order to spiritualize it. What you're doing is that you're engaging with this resource in order to make it holy. Because when you engage with something in order to make it holy, now it becomes holy. Tanya teaches us that everything that we engage with, everything that we touch, depends on our intention. Depends what you have in mind. If your intention, you have two people indulging in a steak. One is eating it like a pig, and the other one's eating it like an angel. The first one's eating it only to satisfy the desires and the cravings and the passions of his animal soul. The second one is eating it in order to sanctify the Shabbos. Because today is Rosh Hashanah, and today I want to make the day special and holy. So how am I doing that? I'm doing that by eating this particular steak. It's all the intention that makes a difference. Today's Torah study, by the way, is dedicated by Stephanie and Jay Marmer in loving memory of Bert Stollerman. On the occasion of his yahrzeit a few days ago, may the merits of today's Torah study serve to elevate his soul in Gan Eden. It was actually in the merit of Bert Stollerman that we actually were able to initiate the Chabad cemetery here in Palm Beach Gardens. We have our own cemetery. It was through the experience of burying Bert that Jay and Stephanie stepped up to the plate and helped us to establish our own Chabad cemetery. So that here at the Chabad Palm Beach Gardens, we can truly say that from cradle to grave, we've got you covered. May this Torah study elevate your soul in Gan Eden. So this is over here why the Jewish people are so concerned with using physical resources. We had a Catholic here come to our shul once, and he remarked that he said, at his Catholic service, after the service, they'll give you coffee and a piece of cake. But here, he says, at the Chabad, he says, here you got prime rib, you got a buffet of different fishes, set de peshe, he called it. They're pouring single malt. It's like, I want to be Jewish, right? Why do we do this? Is this because we're obsessed with food? Not really. The reason that we do this is because we're trying to sanctify the food. Do you know that the Sephardic Jews at a Shiva house, in a Shiva house of a Sephardic Jews, they want to make sure to eat from every piece of food that is at the Shiva house. Why? Because they believe that the soul of the deceased will reincarnate into the food, which is a quick fix. If there's like a little mitzvah that the soul needs to do to finish its mission in this world, it will go into the food so that the blessings will be recited on the food, and thus the soul of the deceased will be elevated. So they will actually indulge in every piece of food on the buffet. They'll literally make sure to eat every piece of food on the buffet, a piece of everything. In order, why? Not because they're gluttonous, but because they're here to elevate the soul of the deceased, which may or may not be invested in this particular food, in the secret of reincarnation. In much the same way, we all know that the reason why you bought the house that you live in, and the reason that you did not buy the house in Palm Springs or in Toronto, the reason why you have your car and not a different car, the reason why you are a member of this golf club and not that golf club is because you have divine sparks that are waiting for you to use those resources for a holy purpose. And since the beginning of time, the world, that piece of real estate has been waiting for you to engage with it in a holy way, to do a mitzvah with it. You think your plane was rerouted through Europe, through a different country, through a different city, by mistake? It wasn't by mistake. Everything's a part of the plan. Everything is part of Hashem's plan. And if you find yourself stuck overnight in Schenectady or somewhere else, it's where you're supposed to be. That's right. And you're like, who even wants to live in such a place? No. This is where you're supposed to be. Where was I yesterday? I was at some random place that I davened. I stopped on the side of the road to daven mincha or something, to pray the afternoon service. And I was like, thinking to myself, like, I don't know if anybody ever prayed in this piece of real estate. I literally had to pull over and, do the afternoon service. And I was saying to myself, you never know, maybe 5,000 years, the world is waiting for a soul to come here. Maybe it's my soul. And maybe my gas tank or whatever, my schedule was such that I needed to daven mincha at this spot, because who knows who else might have davened at the Yeehaw Junction in Central Florida to be able to, sanctify that space. There's a beautiful story about the school. Okay, there you go. Maybe both of us. So there's a beautiful story about the school teachers of Beshenkovitz. Have you ever been to Beshenkovitz? Me neither. Beshenkovitz is a town somewhere in Russia, and the school teachers of Beshenkovitz, they were walking to Lubavitch, to the Chabad headquarters in those days. This was like 100 years ago, more, and they were walking there to study Torah from the Rebbe, from the Chabad Rebbe. On the way back, they were walking back. And they stopped on the side of the road, and they were deeply engrossed. Both of them had their eyes closed. One was reciting the teachings that the Rebbe had recited from memory, and the other one was intently listening. And then they were on the side of the road. So much were they oblivious to the surroundings that when the Rebbe Rashab drove by in his wagon with his son, the previous Rebbe, the future Rebbe, as they drove by, they stopped next to these two Hasidim, and the Hasidim were oblivious. They didn't even notice. They didn't even notice that the Rebbe was standing next to him, listening to the one guy repeating from memory what was taught a few days ago in Lubavitch, and now the guy was listening. And the Rebbe turns to his son and he says, you should know that this piece of real estate right here has been waiting 5,600 and X amount of years. Since the creation of the world, since Adam and Eve, this piece of real estate has been waiting for what? For the two school teachers of Beshenkovitz to come to this piece of real estate and to study Torah right here. Now, all that they could afford was walking on foot. But if they could afford a Rolls Royce, then guess what? It's not by chance that they could afford a Rolls Royce. It means that Rolls Royce was also waiting for them. If you can do something, it means that you should do something. I want to give you a quick example of this. This is a very interesting prosperity doctrine. I don't know if I often talk about the prosperity doctrine. It's like this. The beginning of the Purim story. We're coming close to Purim now, right? if you read the Purim story, what happens in the Purim story? It's a story about attempted genocide against the Jews, right? And the Jews win the story, right? And we have a Yontif. But the entire first chapter is all about, it seems like completely irrelevant to the Purim story. The entire first chapter is about the ostentatious, opulent, indulgent party of a despotic dictator by the name of Achashverosh. I mean, the Megillah literally goes into details of his interior design and his table settings. Like, who cares? What is this? Some sort of interior decorating seminar that we need to know what kind of tablecloth to set at our Kiddush next week? Like, what are we doing? Why do we need to know what kind of the curtains when matching the serviettes, right? And then what kind of goblets they were using to drink the wine from? So the Rabbi explains that from here we learn that because God had made Achashverosh exceedingly wealthy, that's why Achashverosh indulged in the resources that he had available to him. Because if God made you wealthy, you should indulge in your resources. How's that? If you can't afford a bigger house, you should build a bigger house. If you can't afford a better car, you should build a better car. And if you can afford a private jet, you should buy one. And invite your rabbi for a trip with you. So why is that? The reason is not because we're supposed to indulge for the sake of indulging, but because those resources were given to you not because you're a genius investor, not because you're such a smart businessman or woman. The resources are given to you in order to sanctify and elevate them. Just like the Jewish people were doing after the crossing of the Red Sea. They saw these resources available. They're like, what's going to happen over here? We were given a command to clean out Egypt. And we're going to make sure that Egypt is cleaned out. And that's why they had to rush it over, right? They had to make sure that they cleaned out all the resources to the point that we Jews are not allowed to go back to Egypt anymore. Why do we go back to Egypt? Because we've got nothing to do in Egypt. We have finished the work in Egypt. There's absolutely nothing left for Jews to do in Egypt. In Palm Beach Gardens, there's plenty of work for Jewish people to do. But in Egypt, forget about it. They finished the job. That's how efficient and effective they were. And that's the spirituality of money. This is the reason why Jewish people are so obsessed with gathering resources, not for a indulgent and gluttonous or self-serving or narcissistic purpose, but rather for a spiritual purpose, because we realize that as Jews, we serve God with the entirety of my being. I serve God not only with my heart, I serve God with my wallet. I serve God not only in the shul, I serve God in the boardroom of my office. I serve God in my home office. I serve God in my car. The entirety of my being, every fiber in my being, every bone in my body, every part of my life is sanctified as I live as a Jew, recognizing that the purpose is not to turn this earth into heaven, but rather to bring heaven down to earth. And that's a wrap.
So